My name is Debbie Wilbanks Cherry. I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, to Hall Wilbanks and Judy Prescott Wilbanks. My daddy is from New Albany. He was born here in New Albany. My mother was born in Los Angeles. Her parents were from Iowa. My granddaddy, George Prescott, was full-blooded Norwegian. So he immigrated from Norway on the last trip that the Lusitania made before it was bombed. So she was born when they were in Los Angeles, and he was working as an engineer at Lockheed. So he was building planes during the war. My mother was born on D-Day. And she has a brother, Eddie Prescott, and Cheryl Prescott Aldrich. My daddy has a sister, Jane Wilbanks Gowan. Daddy's mother died in childbirth. She was Evelyn Kirkland, and her brother was J.P. Kirkland. And Daddy's granddaddy was the Reverend Dr. J.P. Kirkland that preached at First Baptist and several other places around. I have one sister, Diane Wilbanks Beck. She is a teacher at Alcorn Central. She teaches 7th grade. And my daddy taught for about approximately 34 years. He was at the middle school. He coached middle school and high school. He was assistant principal there. So we grew up on the football field, basketball courts. Anything that was taking place at school, we were there because he was there. So we did our homework in the stands. We learned how that this was exactly what we wanted to be involved in. So that's kind of how my love for sports and architecture took place. So I knew I wanted to be involved in architecture when I was 10 years old. And my parents told me, you can do anything you want. It doesn't matter if you're a girl. So I went to Central Elementary School. We were the last class that went through Central Elementary, through the whole old school, before that they went to B.F. Ford. So we were the very last one. I was the first class of integration. That really didn't bother me whatsoever because we had a lot of little black children that were friends. After my grandmother's passing, Cora Sanders helped raise my daddy. So she was always called our little black grandmama. That's what she called herself. So we were always over there with her. She helped raise my kids. She helped raise us. And we still call her family our family. So we still keep in touch. And I was honored to speak at her funeral. My grandfather had remarried and had Jane. He married Moss Davis. She was from Reed, Mississippi, or rather known as Schooner Bottom. So she was wonderful to us. She couldn't have been any better to my daddy. So our family was always very supportive of each other and everything that we did. So when I decided that I wanted to be an architect, I played with Legos all the time. I was always building something. And I guess it was about 10 when I really said, this is what I want to do. So I went to school every day with that on my mind. My doodling would be floor plans or elevations or trying to figure out a better way to do something when I went in a room. It's just something not right about this. I don't know what. But when I got in middle school, I didn't want to take home ec because that didn't interest me. So I was the first girl that went through shop. I took shop class, which I thought was absolutely wonderful because it helped me to know what I wanted to really do. So that was the 8th grade. And I went to summer school that summer so I could take enough classes to get an advanced diploma, and I could take drafting my senior year. So I had everything planned out. And Bill Wigington taught drafting. And it was absolutely a phenomenal class, because if you don't know how to do things on the drawing board, that was way before computers ever thought about being. I mean, I graduated in 81. And before computers, you had to do everything on the board. And I think it's very important now, after hiring employees that don't know how to do things on the board, you need to know the basics. You need to know why that line is there. You don't rely on the computer to just put it there. You have to know the reasoning behind it. And that really helps. So Bill Wigington was a wonderful influence, and his son Kevin now teaches that. And I hope that is something that is continued, because having them on the board really, really helps. After high school, I went to Northeast a year and then transferred to Mississippi State. So while I was at Mississippi State, I was fortunate enough to go to New York to represent the school for the American Institute of Architecture students for a seminar, and just, it was more of a fun trip, I think, than anything. So we got to go to New York. We had different schools from all over the country there, so we got to meet a lot of people that we literally still stay in touch with today. One of the big things that we had was one of the last night parties was on top of the World Trade Center. So, you know, and you think you were up there, and then now it's like no longer there. It was just kind of a surreal experience when you saw it coming down. You know, like I was there. So our last year at Mississippi State, we had to go to Jackson to finish our thesis. It was a 2-year thesis. I had chosen to combine my love of sports with architecture, and I knew I wanted to do a baseball stadium. And at that time, I had decided I wanted to do one at Mississippi State. Well, they were undergoing a renovation at Dudy Noble. I had no idea that was going to happen. So I chose the Los Angeles Dodgers. I just picked up the phone, which was a landline phone at the time, and I just called Peter O'Malley, who was owner of the Dodgers. And instead of saying no, I asked if I could have them as my clients. And he said absolutely yes. So he gave me a 2-year commitment for the Dodgers to provide anything that I needed for me to complete my thesis. And that was an awesome experience. I flew to Los Angeles, got a lot of the information that I needed. I had chosen to do a baseball stadium in Santa Barbara. We had to get all the information, of course, by mail. So I was able to deal with the people in Santa Barbara, get what I needed. While I was out there, I had a lot of help from Tommy Lasorda, Bill Russell, Steve Sachs. The people that were on the team were tremendous assets. We went to the games. It was wonderful. You know, we were treated like royalty anytime we were there. It was just an awesome experience. And did that my next to last year. Then the last year after I completed my thesis, I flew back out there to present it to him, because I guess when he said, you know, he couldn't believe that some Southern girl just picked up the phone and called him, that he was just kind of intrigued by why, you know. And I'm like, well, the only thing you could have told me was no. So that was just kind of my whole philosophy. All they can say is no. Why not go for it? So I went to Los Angeles, and I lived out there for a while. And a few earthquakes, I was ready to head home. And fortunately, Hugh McLarty had one of their showrooms for Benchcraft out there, and he was able to move everything back for me. And when I got off the plane in Memphis, I had called my parents and told them what time the plane would be there. I got off with my purse and my lipstick, and that was it. You know, I was ready to come home. I had heard I'll be home for Christmas on the loudspeaker in one of the malls, and I'm like, I burst out into tears, and I'm gone. You know, I am going home. So it was a nice experience, but that made me realize New Albany is where I wanted to be.
What year was that?
That was in 1987. And we were in the epicenter of the earthquakes. So you got to see steel that was turned into S's and see what damage that it really can do. And at that time, nobody was really doing earthquake design around here. Even though we had the New Madrid Fault and those type things, it was really not a consideration. And while I was out there, I got a call from an architect in Tupelo and had said, hey, if you come back, I'd like to talk to you. So I'm like, God's telling me I need to get on back home. So I took it as an advantage and came on back. Worked in Tupelo for that firm for probably 3.5 years. Got married and then went to another firm and stayed there for, goodness, became a principal in that firm. Then had my own firm. So I was principals in firms for 15, 16 years, something like that. And was working in 12 different states, doing all sorts of work. It was, I spent a lot of time in the air. I was raising 3 boys. You know, thank goodness Dave was wonderful. My family was wonderful, and friends were wonderful because we kept, you know, who can pick them up now? So you can do it all. You have a village like New Albany to help raise them. That was perfect. And then after I left there, because the economy took a downturn, and I think everybody was going, what's going to happen? I had an opportunity to go to Ole Miss and be assistant director at the facilities management department in construction and renovation. So I was in charge of, and we had 250 guys there. So I got an opportunity to work with the athletics, because every Monday morning meeting we were in charge of the logistics for all the sports that were happening. So you turn a campus that's a normal campus that may be 20,000 people, you turn it into something that's over 120, 130,000 on a weekend. How do you do that? So it was a lot of logistics that we had to work out with athletics to make it run smoothly. You know, it's the little things behind the scenes that you don't really understand. And with doing that, the buildings, after a year warranty is up, we were responsible for them. So we got to see the things like, how do you change that light bulb when you can't get a lift that high to get in there to do it? So it helped me in designing buildings and structures and how to get in there, to look at the little things that made a huge difference. When it cost you $12,000 in scaffolding just to change a light bulb because the lift was 2 feet too short and no man could get in there and change it, that made a big difference in the operational budget of any kind of building. So that was a real eye-opener, I think. After I left Ole Miss, I had an opportunity. I thought I'd be at Ole Miss for forever. but I had an opportunity to go to A2H out of Memphis. They offered me a senior associate principal position. Our company has approximately 130 architects, engineers, designers. We have structural, mechanical, electrical engineers, fire protection, landscape architects. We have 6 branch offices. We have them in Nashville, Memphis, Savannah, Oxford, Jackson, Tennessee. We completed the first Google North American headquarters in South Haven. We work in 48 states. We've got a lot of a variety of what we do. You never know. We're doing a lot of schools right now for Shelby County. We've got all those schools. Some of those are like anywhere from $20 to $40 million, ground up new schools, some of them renovations. Do a lot of FedEx. We've completed the FedEx logistical jobs. We finished some projects at Toyota. I was responsible for those. Those don't shut down. You know, how do you do something in a facility that does not stop? And it makes a big difference. So I think all the experiences that I had just accumulated to how do you keep something going in the background. And it was all from listening to the different people, from the custodians on what works to the CEOs of what doesn't work. So it really helps knowing who to talk to. And it's not just the ones that are what you consider the bosses, because usually they don't deal with the minute details. You need to listen to everybody. And when I worked for Gus Staub in Tupelo, Gus's brother, Travis Staub, their father was J.E. Staub that started Jesco. And I worked with both of those gentlemen very closely. And I remember Travis that had Jesco said, you find the oldest gentleman on the job site and ask him what he thinks. And he'll tell you. And you need to listen to him. And that has stuck with me all these years, because that's usually right. He'll tell you what works and what doesn't. Just because you have it drawn up, that may be how you want it done, but that's a suggestion. You know, and there may be a perfectly good reason why you have it that way. But you need to listen to him as to why it will or will not work. And then you may need to modify some things. So it's a lot of practical experience that you get to deal with. They can tell you what works, what doesn't work. We had a project one time where the CEO was going through and telling them to put wax on a certain floor tile. The custodians knew that you do not put wax on that floor tile. And so they weren't doing it. And so the custodian or the CEO comes up and puts it on during the weekend because they didn't do it. And it completely ruined the floor tile. And it was a certain product that you could put on the desks. And he came up there with like some type of lemon pledge product, which totally ruined the papers and everything. Well, they were using the correct product. You just have to listen to what the maintenance manuals say use. And that's so important. And if you don't ask, you just assume that that's how you did it. So it's the little things that make a difference. We would go to these different stadiums and look at things, and this worked and this didn't work. Or this was positive and it wasn't positive. And my daddy had the very first track meet in New Albany. and it was called like the cow pasture meat, and it was literally in the pasture. So we had to lay it out. It was in his pasture. And so I got to learn how to do those things. And it was fun seeing them and building them and watching people come and just enjoy it. And that's what kind of fascinated me.
The logistics of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how to make it work. And because at the track meet, it was really no set certain time. I mean, it was some time to start, just like baseball. It's not a certain time to start as far as once that battery gets up there. You may be going all day long, not like football. You have a certain time and it's over, or hockey or any of those things. You know, baseball has, you may be out there all day. You may go for how many innings? That's what fascinated me. But the logistics of how to do it fascinated me. Right. Or where you put the porta potties. Yes. Yes. We at Ole Miss. Yes. We had to do that.
You were thinking about that.
Yes.
When you were little.
Yes. So when I was at Ole Miss, I got to do that. You know, and you're like, this is something they didn't prepare you for architecture school. You never worried about where the porta potties went.
But some people think that way, and you did.
And I did. You know, I thought, well, no, you've got to have this here. You got to have this here. And it was as many concession stands as I worked growing up. You know,
you knew how to lay it out.
You knew how to lay it out. And that was when I was at Mississippi State. I mean, I got called into the dean's office, and he was like, why are you taking coaching football, coaching baseball, coaching golf? I said, if you don't understand the philosophy behind the sport, how can you design a facility for it? And he just kind of looked, and he went, I never thought about it like that. Well, he ended up being president of Clemson. You know, he just had never thought that way. And a few years later, I was able to design the soccer field at Mississippi State. And then I did some more things, the renovation of the old tin gym, McCarthy Gym at State. And I was on the student athlete welfare. I was subcommittee chair with Sharon Fanning for the NCAA recertification at Mississippi State. So we got to visit facilities all over the SEC to see how they lined up. So I loved that kind of stuff. And it helped. You know, so you kind of knew what you were looking for. And while I was doing that, I was fortunate to be elected and served on the AIA board, which was the American Institute of Architects board for the state of Mississippi. I was on that for 8 years, president and past president. Got to go to Washington. We received some awards up there. My first year I was on the board was the year Katrina hit. So it was the logistics of how do you get food, gas. You know, we were going down there literally when the federales were looking for bodies. It was that bad. We had to get permission from the governor to fly in. We worked on any kind of logistics we could. We would go buy toys so the kids could have a Christmas, and we would let parents just drop them off at a place and you get what you need. We would do as much as we could to help them. And on AIA, we did surveys at no cost. We would go, and there were times we would go to these homes that the people had not even been allowed to get back into yet. And there was literally nothing left. And you would try to search through the debris with them to find something that they could at least cling to. And one thing that I remember we found was a cross. That was the only thing that this lady had at her house, was a cross laying there. and the flag that was on her father's draped coffin was in a tree. And the neighbor kids were climbing up that tree to get that for her. You know, she was there crying. We were all crying and we were all praying. And, you know, it was just, it's something you don't get over. So it was, you know, we did over 3,000 surveys, the most that had ever been done on any of the surveys had been tornadoes, and anything that AA had done before was just a few hundred. I mean, it was, everybody worked together. So I think that made our chapter stronger. Now, we only had like 300 architects in the whole state. You know, some of these cities have that many in one local chapter. So it was, we all had, it was a friendly competition, but even to this day, I would not hesitate to pick up the phone and call any one of them and say, hey, can you help with this? And I know they would be there. So we all still have a real good camaraderie and respect for each other. And that, I think that makes a really big difference in a small state. You know, we all pull for each other and hope each other does good. And I think that makes a big difference. It's kind of like this town. We want this town to survive. I mean, we could be anywhere, but we choose to be here in New Albany. Back then, it was a handful. Now, it's more now. I would say it's probably, you're probably getting close to 45%. Yeah, it's a lot now. But when I was going to school, I may be the only girl in some of my sections. You know, and we had professors that at the end would say, you know, I think women need to be home barefoot and pregnant. And I mean, that was in the 80s. And you're like, oh, no way. You know, I'm going to show you. I mean, it was kind of like, I'm going to wait you out. You know, I think that just encouraged us even more, you know, because it was perseverance. I think that's all it was. Like, I'm going to show you, you know. No, I did not. And of course, I knew Ted because he's a distant cousin. I mean, because all the Halls were related.
How much older is Ted than you, though?
He is 5 years.
Okay.
And before I ever bought in or whatever, even when I went to New York, I called Ted. He was working at I.M. Pay's office. So he allowed us to come up there and he showed us around the office. And I mean, it was just wonderful. We had a great time, and that was an experience. I mean, when you go up there to somebody like I.M. Pay's office and you see his office and you're just like, you've got to be kidding me. I just knew what I wanted to do. And it's hard nowadays, I think, for kids because they don't know, even though it's a lot more opportunities out there as far as computers and these kind of things, but they just don't know. So I think these career coaches or whatever, some of that stuff can help a lot. But I think there's so many opportunities you just really don't know. You know, you may want to be a doctor one day, or you may want to be Superman the next. I mean, you just don't know. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to combine sports with my love for building something. And I did. And being in construction, you know, that's the big thing. Not just drawing it, but actually being out there while they are building it and doing construction management. And it was hard. Now, a lot of these guys, you know, didn't want that little girl telling them what to do. And that has still been the case. So until they learn you and trust you and know that you're going to be fair with them, when they do that, you don't have a problem. Because they know you're going to be fair with them. Jim Aldrich.
Where'd you learn how to build?
Oh, man. But I had already been building stuff with Daddy. My first, our final big project for the first semester, I built an automatic dog feeder because Daddy had all of these beagles that he was raising. And we'd go rabbit hunting, and I built an automatic dog feeder. And it worked great. It was a V-shaped where you'd pour the food in, and then I had a little trough down there. So as long as the V-shape would go, I mean, it would just give them enough every day. So I had grown up on a ranch. He had Square W Ranch, so I had always been around cattle and knew how to deal with animals, and so nothing like that scared me. I was never intimidated by anything. So I guess that's the reason Peter O'Malley didn't intimidate me. Nobody intimidated me. I guess that was the problem.
Well,
it is. We were on the inside. So how do you relocate the main electrical bank and you can't have the whole building shut down? So you have to make certain changeovers, turnovers. To me, it was not that difficult of an experience because I dealt with logistics before. So you knew what you had to do first, second, third. Now, if you were coming in and had never had to deal with logistics, it would be a complete nightmare, I think. But if you know how to deal with sequencing, that's the biggie. What you need to do first, second, third. So it really was not a problem for me. We had great people we were dealing with out there, and you just have to get it organized. And I'm a 1, 2, 3 kind of person.
You like a list?
I like a list. Paper and pencil list. Okay. Yes, you can do it all. I mean, you really can do it all. You may not get a lot of sleep sometime. My kids, we call them the mascots of the office because I literally had them with me sometimes. I mean, Matt, being the baby, he definitely was. I mean, I had a bouncer in the corner of my office. And when meetings would come in, I would have wonderful people that would literally come pick him up. We had admin staff, other architects, people in there would come pick him up and shake him till we got through with the meetings and then put him back down. So, maybe that's the reason he's in construction now in school. I don't know. They all had little hard hats and they'd go and they were always there. But, you have to, I always had a rule for me that if you were not the kind of person that was not going to stop and take your kids to church on Wednesday night, or you were not going to leave work to go see your kids in a play, you were not the kind of people that I wanted. Your family comes first. And where I am now, that's the way it is. It's creating an environment positive for clients and community. I mean, that is really what we do. And it's a family. Even though you have 130 people, it's truly a family. And that makes a huge difference. But you can do it all. You may go to work with baby throw up back of your shirt or something like that, but I did it. But it does happen. But you can do it. It's not going to be easy all the time. But you've got to have a lot of support. And in this town, you will get it. You're like, oh, goodness, what do you mean I left them at school? I'll be on my way. You feel like you're bad moms too, because sometimes that happens. You would end up having a little gift box there in your attic because they'd say, I told you Monday I've got a birthday party Friday. And you're like, okay, I forgot. But it happens. It happens. So by the third one you learn. The first one you're just kind of rolling with the flow. The second one you're just like, whatever, poor being, And by the third one they're not totally warped. But I've got 3 good boys,
They all survived.
They survived and are making positive influences, So it can be done. But it does take everybody, and especially in this town. And I've always tried to promote this town. And even when I was on the AIA board, I was responsible for the AIA convention that we had in Destin. And I called Sam Mosley. And I'm like, look, I want y'all to play this. And they went down there to play it. It was wonderful. And the guy that was at the Hilton that was over all the events said, this has been the best band that we've had. And then I turn around and working at Ole Miss, I'm working with Willie Johnson, and he's like, I know you. And I'm like, I'm supposed to know you too. And he said, I'm Willie Johnson. And I'm like, Willie, I've known you forever. And then Grandma Cora that lived over there on the north side of town, Billy Ball was her next door neighbor, and Sam lived across the street. So, it's everybody knows everybody, and everybody tries.
Small world.
It is, and everybody tries to take care of everybody, and that's the good thing. But yeah, I love it here. There's no place I'd rather be.